Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us. We have Creating a Mentally Healthy Workplace with David and Dean. Please welcome them with a round of applause.
I was about to say morning. Afternoon. I have mostly lost my voice. No, it's because I didn't have a big night. Whenever I go to an event, there's a lot of background noise. I stress my voice out, and my 18-month-old child has a throat infection. My name is David Rudduck. The reason this subject is really important to me is I've seen firsthand what having a mentally healthy workplace does to people and your business. And so this was the topic that my office manager of my previous firm and Simon Harvey, who is a mental health first aid trainer, were going to do, but they had to drop out from workloads. And I was very, very lucky to rope in Mr. Dean Ellis, and if you want to tell your story.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I'm actually a recruiter, so culture is extremely important to me when I'm placing somebody into an organisation. I don't want a staff member to join and then leave straight away. So my story started nearly 20 plus years ago, we'll leave it at that, when I was in the Air Force and I was a young gay man, just working out my own sexuality. I really wanted to be in a leadership position. However, whenever I looked up the chain of command, I couldn't see anyone that actually looked like me, sounded like me, liked the things that I liked. So I decided that I wouldn't stay in that career and actually left. So I was a mechanical engineer, couldn't see a future, so I left that organisation and went to systems. Funny enough, with systems, like you guys, I realised that it was a very male-dominated environment, and I was alone again. So as I went into recruitment, I thought I'd change the view of technology and starting to help people that were diverse, whether that be neurodiverse, neurotypical, those that were sexually diverse, women in tech, helping them find businesses that have good culture. So that's why this is a topic that's really close to me as well.
And we were having a conversation shortly after a different event. When I realised I was now the lone presenter, I remembered our conversation when I reckon it'd be really cool if he jumped in, and he jumped in really quickly. So we're going to ask you guys to participate as much as you want to. We are going to try and challenge your thinking. This is a topic that needs to be discussed properly. And to do that, we want you to raise your hand. Obviously, we're going to be conscious of time, but if you do have a question, raise your hand. Lovely lady here will try and race around with a microphone. We're also going to try and keep things moving at the same time. So, a lot of these slides are just talking points. We'll steer it in a direction that also helps you guys. But to that point, the focus of today's presentation is to try and understand what do we actually mean when we say a mentally healthy workplace? And what does that impact of having that do for your team, but also for your business? There's a certain set of what we'll call core pillars that we think you should focus on. And we want to help you build this into your culture, into your business. We'll also focus on the support side because mental health is mentioned here, but also the resilience, because if any of you have been or have had someone go through a mental health crisis or an issue, these things happen. But if you build resilience in, it makes it easier to get through. And finally, we'll give you some key takeaways to take home to your business and focus on. So first and foremost, I'd like to ask if there's a couple of people who'd be willing to put their hands up and answer this question. What does a mentally healthy workplace mean to you?
Anybody?
Bueller. Low stress. Yeah, wicked. Anyone else? Yeah, so I'll just repeat it because it's got to go on the microphone. Supportive and help each other, so even if there is stress, you feel together. Yeah, brilliant. Love it. An environment where you can turn up at yourself and be your whole self at the office. So we call that authenticity. Obviously, authenticity has to be not offensive, but you shouldn't have to mask, which is kind of funny from a neurodiverse perspective. That's awesome. Some of the things I have heard and Dean have heard over the years are listed up on the projector. I'm also struggling with words. You'll notice a theme. There's a feeling. A mentally healthy workplace makes people feel good about their job. I love what I do. I love who I work with. I feel supported. And there's the whole argument of if you give people a purpose, they'll get up and they'll fight the battle for you. It's the reason that people join the police force, the army, all these services where they put their life on the line and they probably don't get paid great for it. They do it because they feel like they're doing something that is good. There's a cause. And the first thing I'd say is, does your business have a great core mission, vision, and core values, something that your team will get behind? And it's not just profit. Because if you focus on these things, profit will come. So does anyone want to answer? I gave some of it away. What the benefits are for the business? Yep.
Good people stay around.
Retention, perfect.
Amazing. Because it's more expensive to hire and fire and train than just to keep the people you have. Anyone else?
More productive.
Yeah, 100%.
With that comes what?
Oh, sorry, gentleman up there. Trust, 100%. You trust your leaders. You also trust your staff that they're going to produce the outcome you've set. Very basic slide, but sick days go down. Retention goes up, employee satisfaction goes up, productivity goes up. Ultimately, that leads, and then they're servicing your customers more, they're looking after them. You're going to make more money, right? Anything you wanted to add there?
I just think the retention piece is the biggest one that I've seen personally, that when we create these environments where there's a good culture and people feel heard, they can bring their authentic self to work, they stay around, your IP stays within that business, people are happier and they stay. If you've seen staff come in and walk out, making sure that you have that conversation with them on the exit interview to understand what aren't we doing right is a takeaway that you can take with you today. Make sure that that is being done so you know where you're not hitting the mark for culture.
Yeah, 100%. There are a whole heap of laws around this. Obviously, some of you may know this, others might not. But it's not about a checkbox exercise. Do this because you're being a good human. And looking after your people is good. The rest will come with it. And it also creates leeway, right? Like, people make mistakes. But if you genuinely love the people you work with and you look after them, they will do the same for you. So,
how do we attract people to our organisation? Does anyone have any ideas on what we can do to attract good talent to our team?
Word of mouth, yeah.
I like that, but we've also got to be really careful with word of mouth. We've got to be careful that we're not just getting the cookie cutter of the person that's within our organisation, because then we don't have diversity, right? So I look at things from a little bit of a different lens when it comes to attracting people into an organisation. I think we should start with our position descriptions and our adverts. And one key takeaway that you can implement today is you can use a gender decoder. When you are writing your position descriptions and your ads, you put the advert into the gender decoder and it will tell you whether you're using heavy masculine words or heavy feminine words. And what we want to do, we want to strike a really nice balance so we can attract both genders to our organisation. Because the first thing that's going to happen if we have words like the responsibility and we have 10 responsibilities or 10 requirements, we know from data that a female will look at those 10 responsibilities or requirements and say, I can do 9 out of 10, I'm not applying for the role. However, the guys will go, hey, I can do 3 out of 10 of them, I'm applying for that role, no worries, I'll get that. So it's really making sure we strike a balance, so bringing in that diversity from the very first component. Diversifying our channels of recruitment as well, so looking for underrepresented communities that we can post our adverts on, such as the Diversity Council of Australia will allow you to do that as well. not just using Seek every time. And when we go out to market to ask our staff for referrals, don't go to the 3 people that are the top performers in your business every time, because all you're going to get is that same person into the organisation. Although we want top performers, we want some diversity of thought as well. Anything else you want to add, Dave?
Yeah, I was going to say, for me and my business coach, and anyone who's done any business coaching or thought leadership, hire slow, fire fast. We talked about before retention. Don't hire someone just to fill a seat. If you have core values, and if you don't, you need them. Exclude someone who doesn't meet your core values. And if very early in the process you find out they don't meet your core values, kick them the hell out the door fast, because the last thing you want is someone coming into your organisation and killing basically the amazing people you already have. Because I can tell you right now, I've seen it happen. I've had my company split. Great place, a microphone I've done there. I've had the company split in 2 because I had a bad egg, and that took years to rebuild. Make sure you have, the drive, the passion, the culture fit. And to Dean's point, my view was always, I can teach anyone anything as long as they actually want to do it. Give people a chance. I had a lady who previously was she worked in retail, selling clothes. When I left the company, she was heading up the global data breach response function for our business. Never worked in cyber, never worked in tech. She was amazing. But no one would have ever thought to give her that opportunity. Yeah.
I think if we can really look at our values as the way of recruiting people into our organisation, what we've always called it is culture fit. All right, so we can also flip that to culture add. Is someone going to add culture to our business? They're going to add value to our business from a culture perspective, and really look at our position descriptions and work out what can we coach someone or teach someone to do. Because if they're coachable, they align with our values, get them in the door.
100%. Dean and I were talking about this beforehand, and I personally have an issue where businesses say, we fly a flag for Pride Day or whatever. And it's like, and what did you call it? You called it
Gay for a day.
There you go. And like, if that's what you want to support, fucking great. Excuse me. But it's an all-round thing, all-year thing, right? The same thing as I see organisations who we put money into a carbon offset program. Yet they're an organisation that can actually do some, using their own resources, really good work towards the communities that they are involved near. Do that. Don't just tick the box. And then I was talking to one of the groups out here that was affected by some media changes, and the US government obviously has changed, and I won't get into that, but they're now being told they have to take all the DEI stuff off their website because it's no longer popular. In fact, it's seen as a negative thing. Like, stop following trends. Trends might be good for stock markets and all that sort of stuff, but it's not good for your people. You had a really good example.
That brings it back to exactly what you said at the beginning about being a good human. Diversity and inclusion, although it's a coin phrase that it's almost like it's getting pushed down our throat these days, to be really honest. But do it because you are a good person and you want the best for your team. Don't do it because you think you just need to tick that box. I actually did some work with RES, which is the Renewable Energies business, global organisation, and they really wanted to diversify their team. And some of the processes that we supported them to implement were pretty cool. And I just want to give you these as, again, takeaways that you can implement into your business. So the case study we were given is that they wanted to recruit some lawyers that were coming from a lower socioeconomic area of London. They said, how can we ensure that we get these people from said university through the door, that they're comfortable enough to have a conversation with us? So we created an environment that was safe for them. And we did it from the get-go. When we did the first phone screen, the first thing we told the students, the law students who were going to come through as the grads, that we didn't want them to go out and buy a new suit. We said, we don't want you to come in a suit. We're not going to be in a suit. We're going to be in tracksuit pants and a top. So it was London. They were saying sloppy Joe. They were going to be rugged up. But don't buy a suit, number one. We also then gave the students the option, are you a gamer or are you a walker? And what that meant, when the student said, hey, I'm a gamer or I'm a walker, we split the group in two. And those that said they were a gamer, when they arrived at the recruitment centre, they sat down with the recruiter and they jumped on Mario Kart. And they just started playing Mario Kart, like 10 laps, and through those 10 laps, the questions were asked. It was all recorded, so no one had to take notes, but it was just a conversation. So these people felt really safe and they could be vulnerable with the recruiter. And those that chose walking did a couple of laps of the oval across the road. And again, it really levelled the playing field for that organisation. And I really like thinking outside the box. But not everyone can have Mario Kart, but we can really think outside the box and ask people prior to coming to our organisation, is there any changes you'd like to the recruitment process? Regularly people say, can I have my camera off? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm not choosing you based on how you look, right? I'm choosing you based on whether you're a technical fit for a role.
100%. Yeah, I was just going to touch on that because I had some people in my team who had recently been diagnosed ADHD, ASD and all the rest of it. So my office manager and I started reading a lot of books on this, which also led to her and I going, oh God, I think I've got ADHD and ASD as well, which I do. But initially there were certain things that I heard from people that I went, nah, you're just being a pain in the neck. And then when I actually started understanding it, I went, oh wow, okay, I've got to make adaptations here. And it was things like, some people probably know this, certain people have struggle with certain fabric of clothes, the not being able to interview properly with the camera on. And it's about trying to find accommodations and not just easily turn around and say, you're just being a pain, because they don't fit the stereotypical norm. And those people that we did make accommodations for again, were amazing.
Well, you were saying to me before that not every disability is something that you can see, right?
100%.
I'm going to tell you guys right now, I've got no use of my leg below my knee. But until I told you, you wouldn't know that I don't have any use of my leg. As you see me walk around now, you'll start to notice it. But again, you wouldn't know that. So we've got to think outside. Everybody's... Yeah, well, there you go. We've known each other for a couple of years. That's good. Unconscious bias. Again, I think this is really important training that we can do for our staff, is training them on unconscious bias. I'm going to put my hand up right now. I have unconscious bias, and I'm a recruiter. And I see my unconscious bias kick in when I've done about 30 to 45 minutes worth of screening. I start to fall back into my bias. I have fail-safes in my business to prevent me from making poor decisions, and that's two people doing the process and having reminders. So I have my phone set for on a 30-minute timer that when I'm screening CVs, I have to stop at 30 minutes because all of a sudden, my shortlist will all be women. Right? That's my unconscious bias, and I just think that every woman will get an opportunity. That's what I'm going to do, or it's going to be a white male. It's depending on the day. They're the biases that I swap between, and I think it's really important to be able to pick that up. There's some great, if you'd like some content on unconscious bias or some testing that you can do, at the end of this presentation, my QR code will be up there, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and I can send you some links so you can look at. It's quite interesting just to see what your own unconscious bias is.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this as well, and I'll be brief, but the concept of blind hiring, and when Dean and I last had our chat in person, I said, but dude, you shouldn't have to do that. And
yeah, well, we have to because we're not good at it, right? As if we have an unconscious bias, we're not aware. Like, as if we were perfect and we could make decisions that weren't influenced by our backgrounds and our cultures, then we wouldn't have to do a blind hiring process, or we wouldn't have to test ourselves to see what our unconscious bias is. But I can tell you right now, the only person I've met in, 10 years of recruiting people that didn't have an unconscious bias is a young fella from Byron Bay, just happens to be my EA. Like, the guy just, he doesn't see colours, he doesn't see sexuality, he doesn't see sex or race, and that's, I've worked with a lot of recruiters over my time, and he's the only person that I can trust doesn't have a bias at all. In saying that, let's talk a little bit about safe hires before we move on.
Oops, sorry.
My unconscious bias, just to give you an example, right? I actually needed an EA, my first EA, probably 4 years ago. I told my general manager, if you're going to do the recruit for me, I want a female. I want a safe hire. I'm a gay man. I don't want a man. I don't want my husband to be worrying like, what's happening? You know, you're flying to conferences with, you know, with this dude. I just want to just do this. I just want a woman, and that's going to work best for me. Lo and behold, when I walked into the interview room, the only person that was there for an interview was this young fellow, and he literally nailed the interview. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's actually what I need. He's the complete opposite to me. He thinks differently to me. He's going to keep me in line. 4 years I worked with that guy. Perfect. So when he did the next hire for me, funny enough, I ended up with another male EA, and that just challenged my own way of thinking. And I'm someone that talks about this every single day.
It's I'm sure we all have our examples there. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just kind of push us forward a little bit. The other thing we talked about, retaining people. As I said before, like, if you have to go through the process of hiring a recruiter, going through all the things, building them up, training them, onboarding them, and only to find out they're a bad fit and possibly damaging the existing culture you have, that's really expensive. So why not invest in the people you have, find ways to keep them? It all comes back to culture, right? Like, it's your core values, it's your mission, it's your vision. It's not about the perks. It never should have been about the perks.
What do I
It's
say?
not about
You can't just have a fruit bowl. You can't have a fruit bowl on the table and call it culture and expect people to stay. You know, beer on tap isn't a reason to stay at an organisation.
No.
Connection.
People. The office that we had a parent company in London, beer on tap was their culture because that's a British thing. Not for us. We had video games, we had other things, but it's about creating that feeling, a positive feeling your team have when they come to work. And it's about connection. And again, you had with, I think it was RES, again, the different community groups where people, you know, I've come from small business, and to me, small business, we were a family. We went from 4 staff to 40 odd staff, and we still felt like a family. But obviously, when you get in the hundreds and thousands, that's hard. And yeah, you had a great example.
RES, you know, thousands of employees, wanted to find a way to keep employees. So we were talking about if we could section the business into different categories, what would they be? And we found that we had a high level of LGBTIQ plus people. We had single mums, we had single dads, we had women in renewable energy, which is, you know, a minority group. We had neurodiverse, and then obviously we have neurotypical. So RES created these groups, and they were environments where you could select to come in and come out once a month and share advice and stories. And what that did, some of these people sat in a couple of different groups. So it may have been a woman in tech, but also sat within the LGBT group, and there was lots of cross-pollination of information. But what it did is it created community and connection. And we found that once implementing this, it took a little bit of time. It took a bit of time to implement and get people comfortable to share. But a majority of those, well, we saw a massive increase in retention. And that was just one of the initiatives that we did.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, we all remember COVID. And prior to COVID, you know, I had a number of software developers who were in the office every day. And I saw that they actually struggled to come into the office after it, even if it was 1 day a week, because of social anxiety. And we were lamenting before about that there's even people you can see at this conference who've probably been working remote who are like, oh my God, we're around people, what do we do? And you got to think, like, every environment, how do you create connection? Because even if we're the world's biggest introverts, if we're autistic, neurodivergent, whatever, and we actually would prefer to be behind a screen, we actually all like human connection, funnily enough. It gives us energy. It's something we need. I don't know too many people who don't need that.
Oh, I need it.
Yeah. But how do you do that? Do you encourage maybe your staff to go hire a desk at a WeWork or something once a month so that they can have a chat around the cooler, or do something where they do force themselves out of their bedroom? There's nothing wrong with remote work. It's very successful. But you don't want to see people get depressed, and the stats actually show that remote workers have a high degree of depression and anxiety.
We're walking a very fine line with those that say we want to have flexible working, and I want to work from home 5 days a week. And we're not saying that you shouldn't do that, right? As in, that's okay, that works for you. but as a business, having the options. So if you do have 5 days work from home available to staff, giving them the option and giving them a reason to come into the office. You know, we used to do Good News Friday. No one really wants to be at work on a Friday, like in the office, but we would get people to come in. So on a Friday afternoon from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, we would have everyone in the office sharing a win from the week that was. And we gave them, you know, those that drank tea, we gave them tea. Those that drank coffee, we gave them coffee. And those that liked booze, we gave them booze. And it just created a bit more of a connection, even though everyone was working remotely through the COVID period.
I actually was trying to find a slide that said, you know, what if we train them and they leave versus, you know, what if we don't train them and they stay? But this was the one that came up. And the reality is, right, like, your people are going to leave. Do not fool yourself. But why not look at it instead as, I want them to remember being in my team, in my company, as part of the group I worked in, for their entire career, because they learned so much, they grew so much, and I've become a mark in their career history, their journey, and do what's right for them. I mean, especially if you're going to bring in people that maybe don't tick all the boxes and grow them, you're going to get a lot out of that. When I left my company that I started 25 years ago, I was nearly in tears at the farewell card that I got of everyone saying, oh, thank you for the opportunity. I gave a lot of people opportunity. Not everyone took it. It was up to them. I never even thought that was the impact, but that was the goal. I want this to be an important part of your journey. And if you're trying to penny pinch because, but they're going to leave in 6 months anyway, maybe you're not the right fit.
I just think it says it all in this quote. You know, treat them well enough so they stay. Be a good human. Again, we'll just bring it back to that. Be a good person.
Yeah, be a good person. Maybe that should have been the title of the presentation. Mental health first aid training. Hands up here who's actually done mental health first aid training.
Great. Wow.
Amazing. You guys are awesome. We had about half a dozen people in our team do mental health first aid training with Simon, which is the reason he and I gelled so well. We were just saying before, he's such an amazing, lovely guy, but he couldn't make it for this. The real trick in that is you are not meant to be a psychologist. Your job is not to, you know, help them, diagnose them, make them. Your job is actually to assess them when maybe they're not operating within a normal boundary that you would understand. Try and ascertain what might be going on for them, and then work out, is this a critical thing we need to deal with, or we're safe and we need to try and help encourage them to get the support they need. If you haven't, I'd ask everyone to give it a shot. And even if you don't want to be that nominated person, my team had monthly get-togethers for the mental health first aiders. They had little icons on their profile picture so that if you were looking for someone who was a mental health first aider, you could chat to them. And it just meant, you know, no one was working in isolation. Anyone could reach to someone else as a buddy. And but you also had an example of
a little bit of lived experience. You know, I've been a manager for about 10 years now, or a leader for 10 years, and I had a young fellow tell me that he wanted to hurt himself severely. And I had a really great relationship with this young guy, and first of all, it broke my heart. I couldn't fathom that feeling, but I didn't know what to do. As a leader, no one teaches you how to respond to these feelings from your staff, which is why we say getting this training is imperative. All I did, I just reached out and gave him a hug. I went straight to my managing director and said, what do we do? Like, as in, no one's trained me or set me up for success for this conversation. Right now, the gentleman's safe, but I don't know what we do. So I think this training is really imperative for everybody.
Yeah, and I was saying to him as well, like, that obviously worked really well, but you can't give everyone a hug. Not everyone is in the state. You know, if they're suffering from psychosis or something else, that might be the worst thing you could possibly do. But it obviously worked out very well. But I would encourage everyone, just for a personal knowledge, you learn so much. I learned, and I've gone through a big mental health journey. There was stuff I learned that I went, oh wow, I didn't realise that. Your employee assistance program. I'm not going to ask who's used it, but Who thinks the EAP program at their organisation is worthwhile? Interesting. So when we originally signed up for one, my office manager and I, we were going to sign up for the one that gave them the app that they could connect with, and they could give a score of how they're feeling and all these sort of things. And then I did a talk actually with my psychiatrist at the time, and after it, we realised we were ticking a box. We were literally just trying to go, yep, okay, we've done this thing. And so we found a psychology place nearby that had multiple consultants so that our people could find someone that gelled with them, because you're not going to work right with every person. Yes, go for it. Yeah, I'll repeat the summary is that you feel that the EAP process is not the full service. I'd question that it's not implemented right. We had a thing with our staff, I think it was 8 consults as a default, but if someone needed it, we were happy to go further. Now, obviously there's financials, you've got to be careful and everything else there, but like, what is the point of sending someone to someone to get help? They gel with them, they bond with them, they feel they can trust and be open with them. Oh yeah, sorry, we're not going to pay for any more.
Yeah.
Stuff you. That's basically what we're saying. I would say that if you want to actually keep your people, yes, you may have 1 or 2 people who abuse it, but the vast majority won't.
Look, I used the EAP. I'm happy to share my story.
Yeah, go for it. Oh, yeah.
My husband ended up in hospital with meningitis and lost his memory. So 3 months without his memory. You can imagine like 51st dates every morning. Wake up and be like, I know something's happened, but I don't know what's happened. Can you tell me what's happened? And I'd be like, okay, this is what happened. After about a month or so, I was finding it really difficult to keep giving him the same story. So I started making up stories that were a bit more entertaining for me. All right? So I just kept making up stories, and I realised like, this is not going to be healthy. So I actually reached out to the EAP and I said, look, I need some tools on how I can be a bit more resilient and have this conversation continually. So I actually had 3 sessions with them, and they gave me some great tools to get me through. And the first thing she said to me, what if your husband wakes up and he remembers only what you've told him that was a lie? Like, it's deceitful, right? Because then you've lied to your partner. I didn't want that to be the scenario. So the EAP service really worked for me, and the organisation I was working for, they had 3. So I think you mentioned that you kind of come in, triage, you have a couple of sessions, and then you're left alone. Our organisation had a 3 session, and then they would just buy 5 sessions at a time, and they're 1-hour sessions. We are pushing time, aren't we?
Oh, no, that was someone trying to call me.
Oh,
But we are pushing time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be more.
I'm not trying to be offensive in that either, but we've got to think beyond the money in that aspect. The other thing is, like, how do you build resilience? Social outings. We had, my office manager used to once a quarter buy a Lego kit, put it in the kitchen, or a puzzle, and people would come together while they're having tea. That works in an office environment. But I have this example of accountability, and everyone says, well, you can't make people accountable for their own personal health. Well, you can. You just don't make it a KPI you're going to fire them on. And so my business coach, every time we would sit down as the leadership team and do our planning, we'd have our OKRs for this is all the things we're doing, but she'd say, okay, but what are each of you going to do for yourself? And maybe one person's trying to lose a bit of weight, and they would commit to walking 3 days a week. So every time we'd meet, how are you doing with that? And I 100% guarantee that if you have to report to someone else about how that minor things, that you'll try and do it. But at the same time, if that person was struggling, someone else will say, okay, well, how can I help you? And Julie, my office manager, was amazing. She had a walking club, and occasionally even she would fall out of that. And she'd say, okay, well, you come here, we will go for a walk today. And everyone comes together and supports it, because that's the team, right? And another example, my finance manager, accountant in the company, when she started, she hated reading books, and we made it a leadership team requirement that you had to read one of these leadership books every quarter. So they were all on the same page, literally. She ended up bringing in this inspiring author who circumnavigated around Australia in a canoe or something. I can't remember the specifics of it. Amazing woman. She brought her in to present, and most of our team were in tears listening to it. But it was because she started reading books for herself. And I said to her, Hannah, you are not the woman I hired. And, I never pushed her and said, you have to do this. I just encouraged her and helped her remove the reasons that it was an objection. And also, don't be afraid to put yourself out. Everyone used to post everything on Facebook, and I was trying to get fit, and so I would post that I went for a run. And everyone gave me shit because I was always posting what I was doing on Facebook, and so I stopped. And I went round to lunch with an old mate from school one day, and he was about to do a triathlon. I said, wow, dude, that's amazing. And he said, actually, it was because of you. And what do you mean? Well, you were posting on Facebook, and I thought, if Rudduck's going to get out there and run, well, shit, I should be doing something too. So, like, if you want to be inspired, try and be inspirational, because you never know what that positive outcome is going to have for someone else.
We've heard lots of examples just on how we can create a more resilient workforce. And we're giving you lots of examples so you can just take one and start somewhere. And that's sort of our next slide, right, the key takeaways. My biggest thing is start now. Don't start in another 6 months because you're going to be behind. If everybody in the room makes one action when they leave here in their organisation, whether it is using a gender decoder, for example, for their position descriptions or their adverts, you're going to start seeing change in your organisation. So we want to obviously attract good talent to our businesses. We want to make sure that we retain those people. And as we mentioned, to retain people, you have to create community. What else do we need to do to retain people?
Make them feel good, make them feel safe, make them feel secure, make them feel like they're getting value, like with staff are value these days. But to your point of, like, just do one thing. The biggest problem everyone has is, oh God, there's so much I have to do. How do you eat an elephant? Bite at a time.
I just have a question on the app when we
go
above to attract.
Of course.
How do we attract people to company values when all of them have cliche values listed, which I 100% agree with?
I would say do not read the ChatGPT resume.
No.
Values.
She's saying if your core values, I think if your core values of the company are cliche,
Oh, okay.
100%.
Oh, sorry, the businesses have cliche values.
Yep.
you need to rewrite them.
Yeah.
So what we did is the leadership, and this is an example of what you can do. The leadership team came together and said, if we were going to send half of our team off to Mars, or 5 people off to Mars, who would we pick? And then we involved them in the core value discussion with the view, because that then gets engagement and buy-in, and you want your people to actually feel like they are part of that process. Otherwise, it's a load of shit. It's cliche. The leadership team got final draft. I got final sign-off, but it was based off everything that they'd put together. And it's hard to push up, right? Like, as a fish rots from the head, you want to change the culture of a company, change the CEO. There's a question mark there you need to solve. Because if you haven't got the right core values, how the hell are you going to use them as a measure?
Well said.
Anything else on that?
Yeah, was there any other questions on the app that you had? Oh, the back here.
I've got for our team, we it's really weird talking this. We have a culture where we have diversity. So we've got a good group of both male and female, which is great in our security team. But to hire and attract good people, the soft skills, that's a little bit hard to find and ask the right questions. What are some of the interview questions, or what are some interview questions that we can ask to kind of get that, and fish that out?
I always use questions that are like, how did you react? How did you overcome? How would you proceed? Put them in a stressful situation. So give them an example that is, I don't know, we've got a major outage, for example. If I was talking help desk, we've got a major outage. How would you react in that situation? This is the scenario. You've got a team of 10. You've got 2 level 3s, 4s. What's your action plan? And then get that person to run through exactly what they would do. So you start to see how do they delegate? How do they communicate? How do they engage with their team? So I can give you some more questions. I've got a bunch of questions that I can send to you. Again, connect with me on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message and ask for the questions to do with behaviour, and I can send them over to you. Just let me have the day. I'll do it on Monday.
I'd also say on that as well, it depends on the soft skill that you're chasing. I always encouraged a lot of, like when people came up to me at TAFE or uni speeches we were giving, I'd say go get a job at Macca's, go get a job at Woolworths, force yourself in, like trying to encourage the younger generation to go do jobs where they're socially interacting to build up those skills. But if you're looking at the pool you have, you can teach soft skills despite what some people say, but it's about the aptitude of the person. If you're getting a rub from them straight off and you're seeing red flags, trust your gut, it's probably right. But if you've got someone who's hungry for it and they're chasing it, and take them on a journey. But yeah, contact, happy to help point in any direction.
I like your high, slow, fire, fast mentality.
Yeah. Get rid of the bad eggs quickly because they will ruin your company. Anything else?
Any other questions?
We are over time, but that's okay.
Well, thank you. I'm leaving very well inspired, and I'm sure everyone else is today. So if you'd like to join me in a round of applause.